Lisa Wilder here. Um, I work with our B&H Quilting Services, and I'm live in my studio. Well, not live. I'm taping this, but I am going to give a short video on how to use Qbot, the overlay uh, process, and I'm going to post this video both in a Martelli Long Arm Owners group and on the We Love Qbot group. But because I've had people in both groups want me to give a better explanation of how to use overlay. I have just learned overlay and I'm not 100% perfect on it, but it will save you so much time when you're getting ready to quilt a quilt if you know the functions and how this feature of Qbot works. So I've loaded my quilt just normal like I always would. And I'm getting ready. I'm going to go ahead and plot my points. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plot points. The top right or left, right, bottom right, and left. Just a big rectangle. So that is going to be the surface that I plot. So I'm going to do that and I'll be right back with you. Okay, and I've pulled in just the basic meander. I don't know that you can see the design. I'll get the camera a little bit closer in just a minute. Um, but I've given myself notes. My Martelli people know that I always give myself notes, even if I'm doing an overlay, just in case I lose my pattern or something, that I know that I'm running this basic meander. It's the 10.1 or the very first one you come to. Then I'm running it at 325% and it's finishing out at 11.24 inches tall. And that's just been there, done that. And I've learned I give myself notes every time. So I've pulled it in just normal and I've got it. Let me see. I'm here by myself today and I'm having to do this, but you can see, I think you can see the basic meander and I just have it in the middle of my plotted points. I'm going to let this, I'm going to trim my ends and I'm going to let it run. So I'm going to finish out this row and I'll be right back. Okay, it's just stitched to the end of the row. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit my overlay button and then I'm going to do modify. And this is going to bring me back to this screen that where we make our modifications. The first thing I want to do, well, actually, first thing I did, I have this piece of laminate. It's just the laminate you run through the laminating machine. So I've got it good and sturdy. And I have gone and I have traced my design, just the first little bit of it, and I give myself the starting point of it. And that is where everything is going to line up from this point on, sort of, except for this first row. So we're going to go here. I am going to double click my x-axis because I do not want my design to wiggle on the screen side to side. I want it to go up and down, but not side to side. And I did learn, or I've not figured out how to do this process if your design does not nest well into each other. I tried it with a design that didn't nest and I never could. I gave up. It was being too time consuming. But I've raised my design up for that top row. I don't know if you could tell when I loaded my quilt and I did that first pass, I actually brought it down a little bit off the top of my quilt so that I had some space that I could come back at this step and just do a half run. I like for my, when I'm doing an edge to edge, I like my top pass and my bottom pass to come off the quilt. But I'm just going to go ahead and trim and say okay and done. And on this one, I don't really have to worry about my laminate because I've not moved anything. I have figured out close to my move to start and pretty close there. It didn't have to move much. So I'm going to go ahead and run this pass and then I'll be right back with you. Okay, that pass has gone through. So now it comes to the fun part. Again, I'm going to hit overlay and modify. Now I'm going to go to this screen and look, and you can see, I hope you can see, I know these don't show up real good. Let's see if I can show you. I don't have room to do another pass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that back up to the original, and I should have locked that in just so that it's okay. So there, I've got it. I've got it lined back up. So this is my original pass that I want to make. I'm going to trim it and I'm going to say done. All right. But if I tell it to come to the starting point, it's going to come back and do exactly that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance my quilt. And remember this lovely little overlay that I made? This is where this comes in handy. So I'm going to go ahead and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my overlay pretty close to where I know that that start point is going to be. Because that's about where my quilt was lined up at. But if you don't get it perfect, don't worry, because I'm fixing to show you how to get that done. But let me go ahead and baste down my sides and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've got my sides basted down and I'm going to, it looks like it should want to come to about right here. So I'm going to tell it to move to start. And I'm pretty dead on, but now I'm going to use my overlay and I'm going to put it on my last pass. I've got the design. I lined it up with that half row. I went back and traced that. So I'm going to line it up, and I know that this is where I want to go. And I know you can't see, but I am pretty darn close to where I want to start. If I weren't, this is where these fine tune buttons come in. I could just scrunch it up 1 or 2 points at a time. And really what I'm looking for is that black bubble that I drew to start with. Because of the foot that I'm using, I can see through it, and I kind of want to make sure that that black bubble is shining through that hole. And I've got it there. And so I'm ready to go. I'm going to pull up my thread and hit go. Move all my stuff out of the way. All right, and when this stitches out, I'll show you how to advance it again. Okay, I've got to the end of that row, and we're just going to do it over again, and I'm going to go ahead and walk out the process just because repetition is how we learn. So we'll just walk through those steps again. I'm going to, first of all, find my scissors. I need to trim. I'm going to hit overlay and modify. And the only reason I want to do modify each time at this point is just because I am going to trim my left and right boundaries. But I'm going to bring it back to modify. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not moving my design, but I am going to trim and I just hit boundary. I find that boundary works a little bit better for me just because I don't always get that um, left and right sides completely straight. And if you trim to your boundary, even if you've gone crooked, it's going to stay boundary. It's going to go by that red line that you have. But there again, we're going to tell it. Um, and this way actually is a little bit different because a while ago I rolled it forward first. This time I'm going to go ahead and tell it to move to the start. And that kind of locks my head in. So this is going to stay right there. Now I'm going to advance. And you can do it either way, whatever you find easiest. By doing it this way though, you cannot base down your sides without exiting and all that stuff. And I probably wanted to do that, especially since this isn't a real quilt top and it's kind of crooked. But anyway, there again, I'm going to take my overlay and I'm going to put it on the one that just went by. And you can say I'm actually way off. I'm about 1 inch off of my design. So that just shows me that I need to advance it a little bit more. Sometimes I just take that overlay and leave it so that I have an idea, so that I at least get close to where I want it to be. I really hate the fact that I didn't base down the sides. All right, that looks like it's going to be good. And since this is not a real quilt, I'm not going to worry as much about basting those edges down. I'm just going to stand here when it first starts so that it doesn't get hung. And I'm going to hit go. And I'm just going to go. You can see since I didn't baste my sides. Ah! Well, look at there. We have an issue. Okay, not real sure what happened there. But what I've done is I'm telling it that I want to percent restart. And the reason I do that right now, my head's still locked. But if I did that percent restart, that actually frees up my head. So now I can go back and actually, I know what happened. My thread got hung. And I don't know why that did that. These things happen every once in a while. So it just takes a little getting to know your machine. But let me rethread it and then I'll come back and just show you how I fixed this. Okay, just to let you know what I'm doing. For some reason, I couldn't reset my machine. So I've actually turned my head off and I'm turning it back on. Some of you might be leery of doing that. I cannot say for sure on other machines. I'm assuming it's the same, but I know on the Martelli machine, you can turn the head off and it not do anything with your Qbot because Qbot is a total different system. And since it's not built into your machines, I would assume it's the same on all others. So I've turned my head off and I'm just going to manually restart it that way. But that's okay. That will not mess up this process. And I will show you. Let me get to the next step. Okay, we're going to find out together if this worked. Since my machine was, since I had the head freed up, I went ahead and basted down my sides. There again, I want to make sure that I have my template laid out. And I have it where I want it to start. I'm going to put percent restart at 0 because I want it to begin back at the beginning. And let's have it move to the start and see if we got out of alignment. And it happens a little bit. So it looks like I did get a little bit out of alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my fine tune just to get it back to that very starting point. And I'm pretty close. And I can tell how close I am just because on my overlay, because I did stitch out enough. Now I've got my overlay laying there. But we're going to say that's close enough. And in reality, if this was a quilt, I would probably pull those stitches out anyway and just start over. And for you Martelli people, since I've restarted my machine, I do want to make sure that I've got my stitch regulator turned back on and my stitch length back to what I was doing before. Because when I turned it off, it went back to the how it starts. Yeah, I didn't come right back on that design. But like I say, chances are I would pick that out anyway. But other than that, I'm pretty much back to where I want to be. I've got it lined back up, so I'm going to let this one stitch out. And we'll do it again because it looks like I need about 2 more passes to finish this quilt. So we're going to let it stitch out. Okay, I've once again advanced my quilt. Hit overlay. I'm going to modify. And there again, just so that I can trim those outside edges. And hit done. And we're going to tell it to move to the start. And I've got it lined up with my template. And for some reason, it could be a while ago whenever my thread messed up, it may have knocked the alignment out just a little bit. So it's coming off my quilt a little bit. But there again, all I'm going to have to do is use my fine tune buttons. And bring this back to where my overlay says that I want to start. And you can fine tune as much as you need to. All right, so I've got it there. Pull up my thread and go. All right, we're going to let this one stitch out, and then I'm going to show you the last pass, because as you can see, I'm to the bottom of my quilt. So as soon as this one stitches out, we'll come back and we'll do that last pass, and we'll be done. Okay, we've made that last pass, and we're going to hit overlay again and modify. And we're going to bring our machine over here. Now this one, because this is our last pass, and we can cut it off, but there again, we're going to double click our x-axis, and what that does, when that button's red, then your design won't move side to side. It'll move up and down. And the same thing if you needed to move side to side, but you were good the other way, you would just double click the y-axis. But double click it, bring it down. When you get it where you want it, I'm going to go ahead and tell it I want to trim off my boundary. And that's going to trim off the left, the right, and the bottom. And we're going to say done. Now this one we don't have to use our transparency because we're coming down and doing our next row. And in theory, this looks like it should be about where it's going to want to be. I was close. And I go ahead and move it to where I think it's going to be pretty close to starting before I hit move to start. And the only reason I don't like that sound that the wires make whenever it's moving long distances, and also to me it just seems like it would wear your wires out quicker by doing that. So I try to get my head pretty close to where I think it's going to start anyway. And I'm going to hit go. And this is going to stitch out. I'm just going to come down here. And I have quilted this entire quilt. And I've only plotted points one time. So aren't you excited about how much quicker you can get your quilts done? Just knowing how to use overlay. So if you have any questions, post them below this video. I'll get it posted. And hopefully somebody in our groups will be able to answer any questions. I'm not affiliated with either company anymore, but I use these products. I love them. And to me, just knowing how to use them takes so much stress off. And they're so fun. So anyway, happy quilting. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks. Bye.